Cameras will be able to do anything and everything, but they'll always make things look normal. Once you do, you will see life through a new lens. Oh my God, I want to be that artist, that perfectionist. When you see that all the time, it does make an impression on
Thank you so much for making the time and joining us here for this lovely conversation. I'm excited to talk about artistry and excellence and the pursuit of a craft that is self-fulfilling, and is beautiful. So, for people who aren't familiar with you yet, could you please introduce yourself?
My name is Matthew Jordan Smith. I'm a photographer for like the last 37 years professionally. My father got me started in this whole business, gave me a camera, and it went from there. I started my career going to art school in Atlanta. Left art school and went to New York and worked as a photo assistant for a lot of fashion photographers. And my agent discovered me as a photo assistant, brought me on. I started shooting at first just beauty, like the world of fashion beauty, but really concentrating on just beauty, hair care, skin care. That was all I wanted to do. And then from there, that led to magazines commissioning me to shoot covers of magazines. Because back then it was like all models on the covers. And then there was a photographer who was shooting a celebrity for cover, a special cover. And the photographer backed out to take an advertising job. So the editor came to me and said, "Oh, can you shoot this celebrity for this cover? Just shoot her the same way you shoot all the models." I'm like, I can do that. And that was Halle Berry as my first cover.
Not bad. Yeah.
Then from that, it led to them giving me more celebrities. I think that first year they gave me Halle Berry, then Vanessa Williams, then Oprah. And once I shot Oprah, she gave me a shout out on the show, and then things kind of blew up from there.
Oprah can make magic happen.
Yeah, that's true. That's kind of how it happened. And
well, she wouldn't give a shout out unless there was something worth shouting out. That's for sure.
You're kind, man. You're kind.
Anybody who has seen your work will quickly realize just the level of excellence and artistry that you put behind it. And what's always interesting to me is, photographers kind of start in the same place. They're initially, it's like, how do I do lighting? How does this camera equipment work? How do I get this, desired outcome? And then pretty soon some plateau while others keep rising. And I'm always curious, what is that thing that's different between the two, where you continue to grow and pursue a standard of excellence where maybe others gave up for some reason?
It's funny thinking about that, because I think there are these hills and valleys in everybody's career. My first book, I interviewed and photographed 50 celebrities, and one of them was Sam Jackson. And I remember like it was yesterday. I remember doing his interview, like in his trailer, and I asked him the question. I said, what was the breakout point for you in your career? And he's like, well, that's a funny question, because I've had many breakouts in my career, and they're never like you think they're going to be. It's never like just this one thing that skyrockets you to the top. It's not that one thing. You go through these hills and valleys. He says, I had this point where I was getting my first breaks and doing these movies, and then I was quiet for a long time. He says, and everybody around me is like being really successful. Like all my friends were getting all these big movies, and I was getting nothing. The phone wasn't ringing. He said, I got depressed, and I was going to quit this industry. And then it was my turn. He said, but it was like quiet for a long time. You don't think about that now when you see his work and you see him everywhere, but he almost quit. As a matter of fact, he said he did quit. He fell off into drugs, and his wife helped him get him back on the track. And now you'd never know that. But that's how I think every artist's career is. You have these ups and downs, these hills and valleys. And I learned that from talking to him. I've learned that from my career. I've learned that from even going to different exhibits and seeing other artists and their careers. I remember as a photo assistant, I went to see this show in New York. Is at the Met, and it's at the time the life work of both Picasso and Matisse all in one place, and you got to see their work over decades as they were like kids on up to the end of their life, and you saw their work evolve. And when I saw that, I'm like, wow, it's not like you think where you're like just like on this trajectory. It's not that way. It's up and down, and you don't fail unless you quit. Like, I mean, think if Sam Jackson had quit way back when.
That would have been a disaster.
Right.
Yeah.
So I learned then, you just never quit. You just keep evolving, taking a break if you need that break, but you just keep going.
What does that look like for you?
For me, it's always having the space to do my personal work. There's a place when you get so busy where you can get burnt out. I've always traveled a lot. I've always said I was going to travel at the end of the year just to get away and do something for me. And I remember the first time I took a trip like that, it was to Japan. It was like 1999. I went to Japan, 1999, August. I was going to go for a few buddies. They all backed out. So I'm like, okay, I'll go by myself. And I did, and it's the best thing that ever happened to me because it changed my life. I didn't know it then, but it had a imprint on me.
Why? What happened?
And everything you think is normal, you go there, and it's like, oh no, this is not normal. I'm like, oh, this is old. You go to Japan, like, that's not old. Only 300 years? That's nothing. You know, it's like, it just changes your whole perspective on life.
Yeah.
And that's what it did to me. Like, you know, eating with a fork, sitting in a chair, those things that you take for being normal, it's not normal there. And when you see that and say, oh, that's been around for thousands of years, you're like, wait a minute, who did it first? And you see differently, you think differently, and you see the craftsmanship that they have in everything, and the respect. And I'm like, I like this. Like at the time I lived in New York City in Times Square,
Brutal.
which was busy. I was on 43rd and 10th.
Ooh. Yeah, I lived in
The
New York
Strand.
City. Yeah, I avoid that area like a plague.
That was home.
Man.
And then I went to Japan and went to Shibuya, and it dwarfs Times Square. I mean, it's nothing. And I'm like, oh shit, look at this. This is crazy. But I fell in love with it, and now that's home.
So what has that done to your work as an artist? Like going to another country, and I think that's so enriching. Otherwise, you get stuck in the same conventions. You need to be exposed to things to be inspired.
You have to be.
So how is that?
I mean, it's changed everything for me. Like I see work differently. I see material differently. I see
Textures.
I see, touch. I hear things differently. What's so beautiful about being in Japan specifically, you get 4 distinctive, actually you really get 5 seasons. You get, spring, summer, winter, fall. You get the rainy season being the 5th season, but they come like clockwork. But as they come, you can almost feel the year changing like week by week. You can feel every season from the beginning to the middle to the end because it changes. And with each one, there are sounds to each season. And different artists put those things into their movies, like Kurosawa, he puts like all the seasons in his movie, and they're subliminal. You don't even see it or hear it for me until I moved there. I'm like, oh wow, that's the sound of summer. That's the sound of spring. I'm like, oh wow, I never thought about that before.
It almost reminds me of Vivaldi's 4 Seasons.
Yeah, it's just incredible. Yeah. Like, it's funny. Like if I go away and travel and I come back, a week later, things have changed. Like the sound of summer in Japan is the cicada. It's like a sea of cicada. Yeah. But I went away in June, came back, and it changed. I'm like, oh my God, the summer's about to end. Because you hear them get less and less and less. And then it's just quiet. And when it's quiet, you're like, it's been so loud all summer. So to even think about that visually, if I had to take a picture of that, what that sounds like, what that looks like, I'm like, what's a loud picture? What's a quiet picture?
Colors? I don't know.
Colors,
Sharp lines.
movement, all those things.
Yeah.
Is it sharp? Is it in focus? Is it blurry? And what would that sound like? So I think about things differently from living there.
That's fantastic. So, one thing that I think about so much, and I'm sure you do as well, like, what is an artist? It's this thing that's hard to define, but maybe we can try.
I like the idea of that, defining that. An artist is a person who is in touch with themselves and learn how to express that in whatever way. Visually.
Would you even say they have to express themselves? Like there's this need. There's this.
I'd say they are compelled to express
Compelled to
themselves. When you are an artist, you are compelled, like your soul screams to let this thing out, even if people around you don't get it. Because many times they don't get it at first. But an artist will keep putting out that work out there, regardless of if it sells or not. It's not about selling the work. It's about expressing the art the way you see it. Maybe it will sell after you've gone from this earth. Who knows?
Which has happened more times
Which has
than
happened
once.
exactly. But you've got to express yourself as an artist, because maybe the world is seeing from A to M, and you're all the way in Z. You're out there in this other realm. They may not get it until decades later. Who knows? But you've got to express yourself.
What if you're just doing bad art, but you think?
Well, that's subjective. What's bad? And if you think about, it's funny. You think about work, you're like, as a matter of fact, there's a photographer, I remember years ago, I saw his work and I'm like, I hate this guy's work. And I don't say that about people's work, but I'm like, when I first saw this guy's work, I'm like, I can't believe this work is like every month in Vogue magazine. I'm like, I'm offended by this work. It's like, so like, I didn't get it. But every month I'd see it, to the point where I could see the work and know who shot that work. And then I'm like, actually, it's brilliant, because here this whole world of fashion, beauty is doing this illusion of what beauty is. And here this guy is doing it raw. No hair makeup, no frills, no pomp and circumstance, just like this pure, unadulterated, almost dirty work. But he was doing it consistently. So every time you saw the work, you knew who shot that work. It was his thumbprint. And I love it work. I love it now. I love that he is consistent in his vision. It's not an accident, because if you can do it over and over and over again, it's intentional. And it's pure, and it's from the soul.
But the craftsmanship was there.
Oh yeah,
right?
that was
the
there.
skill was there. It was. You didn't resonate with the taste. Of the work at first.
But I love his work now. I actually bought his book like a year ago, and then reading the book as parts of his life of the book, his work looks like his life. I mean, it's just like his work is him. Through and through. You read this guy's life, you're like, oh shit, he's been through it. Crazy stuff. And his work shows that. So he's pure. And I think it's great to be pure and show who you are, regardless of what people think. Because imagine going and showing your work the first time. People are like, oh no, you should do this, you should do that. And he said, no, I'm going to do this. If they get it, great. If they don't, great. But I'm staying with this.
Right.
And that's kind of cool to do.
That is cool. And you need to have that confidence to understand that this is actually good work, even though not everybody will appreciate it. And I think that's normal. It shouldn't. If you feel like you need to please everyone, then you're probably
If you're trying to please everyone, you want to please no one.
Exactly.
But there's an audience for everybody. You got to find your audience, and then be true to who you are. Once you're true to who you are, and do that work all the time. And that means you are really expressing who you are as a person, not even as an artist, as a person. You're expressing who you are, without being ashamed of that or hiding that, just purely showing who you are visually. Once you really do that, nobody can copy it. Like nobody can copy any of us. Yeah. Like we all have our own thumbprint. Yeah. Every person on the universe has their own thumbprint. Once you show your thumbprint, you're kind of golden.
Yeah. So another thing that's very interesting, very much related to this is kind of the artistic lifestyle in general, because it's not just that one thing you do, it's everything you do. And then you have to be inspired. You have to live a life that moves you and create a world for yourself. You can't just like compartmentalize everything. So like, you know what I mean? It's like, I remember one of the best designers I've ever worked with, when I came to his house, and he gave me tea and we sat there and we chatted. The house layout, everything, the way he served me tea was like his designs. The cups, the kettle, how he timed the kettle and to what degree it was heated, and how he had a timer running when he was brewing the tea. I mean, it's just, that's how he designs. He's meticulous. He pursues perfection to such an extent that I've never met a designer like that before, and that's why he's so excellent. But then when you see his life, all of it is, it embodies that type of work.
It's wonderful to see that. It's wonderful to see that. There are so many artisans, like real artisans in Japan, where it's made me see things differently. I'm like, oh my God, I want to be that artist, that perfectionist. When you see that all the time, it does make an impression on you. I've always said there are three things in life that really enhance your life: the people you meet, the places you go, books you read. Places you go definitely has enhanced my life, and it always leaves this deep impression. So I do believe you have to get out and experience life, because the more you do, the better artist you will be, because you'll have all of this input from everywhere. Just don't live in your backyard. Just don't stay in your state, in your city. Get out and experience life, other cultures, life, other food. Once you do, you will see life through a new lens.
Yes, absolutely. That is so true. And being an artist is a lifestyle. It's not just creating artwork or some.
It's a lifestyle.
So, okay, now, all that's amazing, right? And we're talking in kind of ideals, but we live in a world where patronage is no longer a thing.
Yeah.
And commerce is a thing, and capitalism is a thing, and having a foundation to live this lifestyle, to create this kind of work, how does one get there? Because it's not an easy path, and you can't.
No, it's not.
You can't just start there, because first of all, you haven't honed in your craft. So even if you have a vision and taste for it, you haven't started. You don't have a brand. You haven't created work, and maybe it's sloppy at first. So it's going to take time to get there, but you still need to pay bills and eat. Can you talk to us about this? How does this work? How do we survive in this world as artists?
I remember the very beginning of my career, like you'd always like wondering, how will I pay the bills? How will I do this and how I do that? And there are all these voices around you saying, oh, you can't do this or you should do that. And in the very beginning, when I started out as a photo assistant, I was broke. I'm like living on peanut butter and jelly. I kid you not. And it was just like I had all these worries about, bills. But then as I got more and more into my craft and into the business of it, work just came. And it's funny, like, I'm a man of faith. I believe in dreaming big. I believe in, of course, working hard, and being paid right for your work. But I also believe if you surround yourself with the right people, things just happen. I didn't have an agent at the start of my career. My first agent found me, and at a point where I was so broke. It's kind of funny thinking about this now. The point when I was so broke, my first agent came to me, and I remember he was the agent for a photographer who I was working for. And he approached me, and this is the same time I was about to get the job shooting Oprah. And got the job. I just shot the job. He's now my agent, and they want to do a buyout. I'd never done a buyout before, you know. Harper wanted to buy all the images, and I'm broke. So I'm thinking like, oh yeah, like, you know, $5,000, I'll sell everything. He's like, oh no, you won't, you know. And he threw out this number, and I'm like, oh hell no, they'll never. And they didn't blink an eye. And I'm like, okay, you know, it made me think differently about everything. The business side is different. You do need to be aware of what your work is worth, and be ready to say no, because those things come. It's not always easy, and it won't be. This is an art form, and a lot of things are subjective. There's work that will sell for a lot of money that may be cool in the moment. There's work that may be cool years later that won't sell at all right now, but will sell later on. So that's just the process. That's the art part. But in terms of like being an artist, making a living day to day, you got to work. You got to hustle. You've got to put yourself out there. Which means, you know, always showing new work, always putting a PDF together to send to clients, always having a portfolio. Like, it's kind of funny now also thinking about even that part of it. Like, you know, I've been around so long. I was there when it was like we were shooting just film, and then it went to showing like, you know, a traditional portfolio. Then it went to being, you know, showing work on an iPad. That was the cool hip thing. And now it's back to showing, you know, tangible work again. You know, people want to touch something. You know, because we're all tired of looking at a device.
We're screen fatigued. How would you describe your lane? So, like, the type of work you're in.
I definitely think I'm in my own lane. I think I've been doing the same thing all my career. If you look at my career from beginning to now, I still kind of shoot in that beauty-esque way. Like, my world is like the face. It has been from the very beginning, and it still is. That's where I'm most comfortable. That's where I live. And sometimes that's in fashion, sometimes it's not. But I stay there. I might evolve and do things a little differently. The same way Matisse and Picasso evolved way back when, but they still looked like Matisse and Picasso. You know, even though they were changing and evolving. Even when Picasso was in the bed in his 90s, bedridden, you know, doing cutouts, it still looked like, you know, Matisse. And I want to stay there. I want to like evolve as well, do different things, but keep it looking like me.
Having your DNA a part of it. As far as, you know, there's say photographers who are, maybe they've never done any kind of commercial work and they're not familiar with what your world looks like. Could you kind of give a summary, like, who are your clients? How do you get paid? How does this world look like? Do you recommend for photographers to pursue, you know, that lane? But let's start with, you know, your lane or your clients. How do you get paid? What does that look like?
Commercially, it used to be in the very beginning just commercial clients. Revlon, Pantene, L'Oreal. That's the advertising side. Editorial side, it was Elle Magazine, Essence Magazine, Time Magazine, American Vogue Magazine, editorial, which doesn't pay as much at all, but the editorial leads to advertising. Advertising plays a lot. For
because the advertisers advertise in the publications.
Exactly. The advertising pays for the magazine.
Yeah, exactly.
So, but you get to have fun doing the editorial.
You get more freedom, probably.
You get all the freedom in editorial.
Yeah.
You get none in advertising.
Because they have a very strict agenda.
Yeah, very strict agenda. It's for a client. It's for their brand. So you got to be aware of their brand. Say if you're hired to shoot for Colgate, Colgate has their color red. If you're shooting for Pantene hair looks different than Revlon hair. So you got to be aware of their brand. You're bringing their brand to life. For a commercial client, they'll give you a layout, or even before you get the job. Before you get the job, it's a three-way bid between you and two other photographers. So it's a three-way bid. They'll look at, say, maybe 100 portfolios and narrow it down to the top 3, and then they'll have all 3 photographers put in a bid. Then they'll also do the phone call. Commercially, the phone call is a big deal, where they want to talk to you about, they've sent you a layout, you've looked at the layout, and you dissect that layout and say how you envision bringing that layout to life, that ad to life. So maybe you'll do your own, like the little storyboard of how you see it done. For me, it's like how I envision the lighting, or if I see problems with the layout, because it's a sketch, like, okay, in the sketch it looks like this, but in reality, this light wouldn't do this, it would do this. You break it down and say how you do it, and make them feel confident that you are the person for that job. And then your bid goes in with against the other 2 bids. Maybe your bid could be, if it's advertising, maybe it could be $100,000, and the other photographers puts down $50,000. But that client looks at their ad and what you've put down in your bid, and like, the person put down $50,000, you can't do that for $50,000. And they know that. So you'll get that job because you've put in everything you need to get the job. That's commercially. So that's the commercial side of it.
Because there's a production. You're hiring assistants of all sorts.
Assistants,
it's a
hair, makeup.
Project,
it's multi-day. It's stress. And you are bringing that client's vision to life versus your vision. And if you're just doing that, you might make a lot of money, but you won't express your vision. And you can get burnt out doing that, because I did. And that's when you've got to shoot stuff for you. I think, you know. And there are different parts of commercial as well, because there's the celebrity side, like doing movie posters, which is another lane outside of advertising. It's still advertising, but a different lane. Then there's products, like doing beauty products like lipsticks and hair color and eyeshadow, and all that's fun. The casting, all those things that go in part of it. And then there's doing those same things also with celebrity, which is another ball of wax altogether. But it's all fun. Yeah. And it's never boring. I mean, all these years later, it's never dull, you know.
For sure.
I moved to Japan from New York. Actually, I moved there from LA. Went from New York to LA. Didn't like LA because LA, you drive everywhere. You know, New York, you walk everywhere. I moved to Tokyo because Tokyo was like another version of
New York.
Of New York, yeah. It's same lifestyle, exactly. Same lifestyle, and that fits me. But now I was born in New York, so you identify what you know. So if I'd been born in LA, maybe I would cherished the life out there. But
yeah. So what kind of work are you doing now? What are you into?
Oh man, now I'm really defining my lane in Japan. I want to work more in Japan and travel less now. The one thing I learned from the pandemic is I'd love to travel less. Before the pandemic, I was traveling like 10, 11 times a year to the States, to Europe. And that was my dream. But after a while, you're like, I've been traveling all my career. I'd like to stay home now. Because I never knew what that felt like until the pandemic. And now I'm like, I kind of like being home. So I want to work more in Japan and travel maybe 3 times a year, 4 times a year. That would be ideal versus the grind I was on,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
because I need to have time to work on my art, which is
Yeah.
where I want to be.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about this just for a second. You know, to in order to do art, what does that like lifestyle canvas need to look like? You know what I mean? Like,
That's a good
Because
question.
there needs to be space to experiment, to breathe.
Yes, there has to be.
You know, and you
There
can't be
has
scared
to
about your
be.
next bill.
No, you can't.
Like,
You can't.
otherwise you're not doing art. You're panicking.
You're tied
and
to
you're
like trying to pay the bills.
Yeah, and you're just worried, and all of that messes with the creativity in the brain.
Yeah, it does. It does. I learned a long time ago. You've got to put your work out there, your personal work out there. It's a funny thing about this now. One of the guys who I assisted for, he was working a lot. We were doing a lot of Victoria's Secrets back when Victoria's Secrets was hot. And
They messed up a bit, didn't they?
Yeah, yeah, it's a different thing now.
Yeah.
But I remember him, we were coming back on a plane from somewhere. He says, Matthew, the best advice I can give you is to do a book when you're hot. I'm like, oh, okay. Years later, I did my first book. I've done 3 now, and I'm working on a new one at this very moment. And I'm going to launch it on Kickstarter next month. But the books do something for you that's kind of cool. They give you a space to put work out there, to reach a different audience, a new audience. The books live long. Like you work on a commercial job. Say you do an ad for a big client that's paying you a lot of money. The ad comes out, you do all this work, it's out there. If it's a really big ad, maybe it's out there for a year, and that's it. But nobody knows you shot it because there's no credit line on the ad. An editorial there is, but on an ad, nobody knows you shot it unless they see your portfolio. And that's just clients who see it. But the average person doesn't know. There's a lot of work that nobody ever knows that I shot it. You know, even though you worked so hard and got paid this great amount of money, nobody knows you shot it. But a book is different. My first book came out 2001, and somebody here today brought the book for me to sign. Today, in 2022.
That's amazing.
That first book I did in 2001. That's what a book can do. It can have a long life. It can inspire generations of people who didn't know who you were when you were, doing the book. They may not have been born when I did the book,
Yeah.
That's kind of cool. So
That is really cool.
I love doing books.
What's the latest book about?
The latest book is I worked with Aretha Franklin for 13 years. I shot her the last 13 years of her life. And we were good friends. So I'm putting that work out there finally as a book. I'm going to launch it on Kickstarter at the middle to the end of next month. So I'm super, super excited about that.
Wow, that is really exciting. So for all of our viewers and listeners, if they want to follow you, we'll just put the plug in here.
Find me
Where
on
do they go?
Instagram. That's where I am every day, basically, like sharing my life, and every part of my life. And just doing stuff. I'm active on Instagram a lot.
Okay. Well, we'll be sure to include tags and everything. Okay. Well, I want to ask you one more question, and feel free to respond right away, or if you want to think about it. But I'm always curious what contrarian opinions people have, and so I'm curious, what are some of your strong beliefs that you have, or a strong belief that you have that most people would disagree with?
I have a lot of those. One that I have that I know a lot of people disagree with is, as a photographer, I came up, learning about light and light meters and the tech. I think, like today we live in a world where you don't need to be tech savvy at all. You don't need to know about light or how light works or light meters. And there are many people who don't believe in using a light meter at all. And that's cool. I do believe you can get by doing that. A lot of people do that all their career and do very, very well. But I think if you understand how the light works, how cameras work, how f-stops work, it opens this other world of creativity to you that will help you in your career farther than you can imagine. So I think everybody, wherever you are in your career, if you've never seen a light meter or touched a light meter or know what an f-stop is or whatever, you should. I know a lot of people don't agree with that, but I think learning about those things will only help you to have control, to really bring your vision to life and be able to duplicate it 10 years from now, 20 years from now, because you'll have a recipe or you'll know the theory behind it and how to get there. Because I've had many clients who said, I love that picture you did 10 years ago. Can you do that on me? I had Aretha say that about a picture I did of Tyra Banks 10 years before she wanted me to do it. She said, I love that picture. Can you make me look like that? I'm like, sure, absolutely. And
it wasn't some autofocus.
No, it wasn't the camera doing like everything for me, because I think that tech will get better and better and better because that's what happens. But still, as the artist, if you want to have your control and your vision, you should know how all that stuff works.
100%. And that takes discipline.
And just the desire to want to be better at your craft or to bring your vision to life. Like, cameras will be able to do anything and everything, but they'll always make things look normal or like everybody else for the masses. What if your vision is like that photographer I was talking about earlier? His name is Jürgen Teller. If you see his work, what if you want to go that direction and do work that looks far away from normal? Basically putting your fingerprint on your work. You learn to do that by learning out about everything, and then finding out what you love and sticking with that.
100%. No, that's a great belief to have, and I think that's what enabled you to be where you are. And I hope everyone will take that and run with it. Thank you so much for your time. This has been very inspirational.
Thank you.
And everyone who is listening and watching, please do follow Matthew because he is a legend. And we will end on that. Thank you.
Thank you.